The eternal flame. When love refused to fade. Seoul once went dark. Not because of war, not because of a blackout, but because love was forced to extinguish at the very heart of the city. The skyscrapers still reflected light, but it was hollow, cold, soulless. After the revolution, after the rising, the world believed that the flame would be allowed to burn forever. But history is always cruel to those who dare to love on the world stage. And this time, silence returned. No live broadcasts. No new songs. No signs. Jungkook and Taehyung seemed to vanish from the face of the earth. Army waited, their hearts suspended in a void, wondering if the love story that defied everything had finally, truly been put out. But fire, even when blown by the wind, never really dies. It hides embers, quiet, red, waiting for the right moment. That night, by the banks of the Han River, a small stage stood without a name. No sponsors. No banners. Just wood, dim lights, and 2 empty chairs. Passers-by stopped. Phone cameras began to rise. And when the city clock struck midnight, 2 figures appeared. Jungkook. Taehyung. No makeup. No costumes. No masks. The crowd roared, but they only offered faint smiles as if asking the world for silence. And the world obeyed. Quiet. Jungkook held the microphone, his voice trembling yet firm. Many said our fire has gone out. That we gave up. But hear this, love is not a candle. Love is a fire that cannot be extinguished. Taehyung looked at him, then added with a voice deep and heavy as the earth. They tried to cover the sky with their hands. But the sky remains vast. And tonight, our sky burns again. Then the music began. Not from a band, not from a recording, just the strum of a simple guitar, played by Jungkook's trembling hands. His voice cracked, raw, scarred, but precisely because of that it sounded real. They told us to be shadows, but fire doesn't hide. They told us to be silent, but silence learned to sing. This is not a story. This is not a dream. This is forever burning unseen. And as the final verse descended, Taehyung's voice joined in, warm as an embrace, steady as a vow. They said love fades. But flames don't fade. They live in scars, they live in ashes. And tonight we burn again. The crowd wept. Some fell to their knees. Some screamed their names into the cold air. But most just stood in silence, witnessing 2 men once called idols, now standing not as symbols, not as products, but as fire refusing to die. That night, the news did not come from corporations or media. It was born from thousands of recording phones, from thousands of hearts beating again. Within hours, the world was flooded with hashtags. Hashtag eternal flame. Hashtag love never fades. Hashtag burn with us. Paris projected flames onto the Eiffel Tower. Mexico City painted murals of them in red and gold. New York lit thousands of candles in Central Park, writing one sentence into the night. Fire is love. Love is forever. And amidst the frenzy, Jungkook and Taehyung sat together after the song ended. Cameras still pointed at them, but they spoke as if no one else existed. Jungkook whispered, barely audible, "Will this fire last?" Taehyung gazed at the tiny flame of the stage light, then turned to him. His smile was weary, but his eyes brimmed with life. This fire isn't ours anymore. It belongs to the world. And the world will keep it alive. Jungkook exhaled, eyes glistening. Then let them know this love will never die. And that night, the world understood something deeper than any news, stronger than any propaganda. Dodger was the spark. Stay awake was the first glow. The fire was resistance. The confession was truth. The unwritten chapter was survival. The reckoning was the point of no return. The revolution was freedom. The resurrection was immortality. The exodus was liberation. The ascension was transcendence. But the eternal flame was the final confession that love once lit can never be put out. It will live on in hearts, in songs, in the night sky. For the fire of love is not just light. It is life itself. And that night the world learned one simple truth. Love never fades. Flames never die. The rebellion of silence. When silence turned into thunder. The world has always feared voices. Because voices can be weapons, bullets piercing the walls of power. But what is more dangerous than sound? Silence. Seoul once buried love beneath 1,000 layers of quiet. Microphones were cut. Live streams shut down. Interviews censored. Jungkook and Taehyung were forced to sit on golden chairs that felt like prisons. The world watched, waited, and in the end, believed that silence was surrender. But ARMY knew better. Silence is not death. Silence is preparation. Silence is the storm holding its breath before it breaks. And that night the storm was born. Not from a stage. Not from an ad. Not from official channels plastered with logos. But from a leaked video, or perhaps one deliberately released. Screens in Shibuya, New York, Paris suddenly lit up in black and white. No music. No text. Just two men sitting in an empty room, surrounded by dead microphones. Jungkook looked down, fists clenched. Taehyung stared straight into the camera. They said nothing. 5 seconds. 10 seconds. A full minute. Then sound. Not words. Just a sharp breath, as if the world was finally allowed to hear something more honest than language. This silence, Jungkook's voice cracked, hoarse, furious, is not our choice. They thought by shutting off the microphones they could silence hearts. But hearts don't need permission to speak. Taehyung added, his tone cold, cutting like a blade. They thought love could be buried in quiet. But today we turn silence into war. We turn quiet into thunder. And suddenly the footage shifted. From that empty room to fragments, empty stadiums, sterile meeting rooms, gilded chairs stripped of meaning. Then the faces of fans crying, screaming, waiting. The music dropped, not gentle melody but the pounding of bass shaking chests. Their voices rose, merged, exploded. They told us silence is safety. But silence is a cage. They told us silence is peace. But silence is rage. Hear it now, our silence turns to thunder. Hear it now, we are louder than ever. Crowds watching in the streets erupted. People cried, screamed, embraced. Red flares were lit in Gangnam. Drums pounded in Sao Paulo. On the walls of London, words appeared in spray paint. Silence is over. Hashtag shot into the digital sky. Hashtag rebellion of silence. Hashtag from whispers to thunder. Hashtag their silence our voice. And that night, governments long hiding behind the excuse of morality began to tremble. Corporate sponsors pulled out, not out of fear of Jungkook and Taehyung, but out of fear of the millions of voices now roaring. ARMY were no longer just spectators. They flooded the streets. From Seoul to Manila, Jakarta to Paris, Lagos to New York, they marched, singing the lyrics together. Silence is rage. Silence is thunder. Police tried to scatter them. Tear gas was thrown. But the human voice rang louder than sirens. The voice of love cut sharper than bullets. And behind it all, in a small room on the city's edge, Jungkook sat with swollen eyes from lack of sleep. Taehyung was beside him, silent. For the first time, their silence was not fear, not force. It was chosen silence. Strong silence. Jungkook looked at him, lips trembling. Do you know what we just started? Taehyung gave a faint smile, the kind that only appears in moments of crisis. It wasn't us who started this. It was them. The world. Every love that was gagged. We just opened the door. Jungkook closed his eyes, inhaled deeply. Then let's never let that door close again. And outside, in every great city, new murals rose, new songs were sung, new poems were written. All with one truth at the core. Silence was never the end. Silence was the rebellion. Dodger was the spark. Stay awake was the glow. The fire was resistance. The confession was truth. The unwritten chapter was survival. The reckoning was the point of no return. The revolution was freedom. The resurrection was rebirth. The exodus was release. The ascension was transcendence. But the rebellion of silence was the moment silence ceased being a prison and became a weapon. Because love, once forced into silence, will always speak again. And when it speaks, it is no longer just a voice. It is thunder ripping open the sky. The last dawn when love became tomorrow. The world has always been obsessed with the night, its whispers, its rebellions, its thunder. Yet no one was ready for the last dawn, the moment when love stopped being a secret, stopped being resistance, and began to become tomorrow. Seoul did not wake to screams or billboards. The dawn arrived quietly. The sun crept over the Han River, piercing the mist, where two silhouettes stood side by side on an old forgotten bridge. No sponsors, no press. Just one video that spread like wildfire, Jungkook and Taehyung at the river's edge, faces bathed in orange light. Jungkook spoke first, voice trembling. They said love belonged to the night, hidden in the dark. But look, love can be dawn too. Taehyung turned, eyes steady. The night gave us resistance. But dawn gives us home. Today we go home. A piano played softly, blending with birdsong and rushing water. Their song was not war, not fire, it was a prayer. They tried to end us in the dark. But dawn is patient, dawn will start. This love is not yesterday, not goodbye. This love is tomorrow, this love will rise. Taehyung's deep voice followed. Through nights we fought, through chains we broke. Through silence heavy as stone we spoke. But love is not battle, love is not war. Love is the dawn we've been waiting for. Passers-by wept. A child whispered, is that them? The mother only cried, watching two men once turned into symbols, now simply themselves. Within hours the world understood, this was no rebellion, no scandal. It was surrender, not to power but to love and time itself. Hashtags bloomed. Hashtag the last dawn. Hashtag love is tomorrow. Hashtag dawn belongs to us. From Paris to Cairo to Buenos Aires, people greeted the sunrise with their song, murals, and prayers. For the first time their love was not controversy but recognition. At the video's end the camera shook. Jungkook wiped his tears. Taehyung touched his shoulder, whispering, "This isn't the end, Jungkook. This is tomorrow." And the world finally understood. The night can fade. Flames can die. Voices can be silenced. But dawn always comes. And love is dawn itself.